And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not going to do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting.
It is Monday, March 11th, and there are 238 days left until America will decide who the next president of the United States will be. One of Donald Trump's chief defenders, one of his aspiring lieutenants, is South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who has become increasingly erratic and unhinged over the last 3 years. Her journey is nothing short of astonishing. Let's watch Nancy Mace in the immediate aftermath of January 6th, when she makes perfectly clear that Donald Trump should never hold political office again.
We've got to hold not only the president accountable and ensure that he doesn't hold office again in the future, but also we need to hold members of our Congress, even in my own party, accountable for the rhetoric and the actions that led up to Wednesday's events.
Now, let's watch the theater of the absurd play out at its end when Nancy Mace is asked by George Stephanopoulos about her support and unrelenting commitment to the same man one election later.
You said he should never hold office again, so why are you supporting his run for president?
Well, I listened to my voters. I listened to my voters in South Carolina, and they've moved beyond January 6th. I said my piece on January 6th. I was very clear about how I felt about it. And I also, as you stated, I voted to certify the Electoral College for every single state in the country. But something's happened between now and then, and that was Joe Biden. And I listened to my voters. They move on. They don't ask me about January 6th. Maybe that's what you in the media, you guys talk about in your cocktail parties, but voters are not talking about it.
Before getting to the heart of the matter, it makes sense to take a look at Nancy Mace and some of her behavior over recent months. Here's Nancy Mace talking about getting up out of bed at a prayer breakfast.
And when I woke up this morning at 7, I was getting picked up at 7:45. Patrick, my fiance, tried to pull me by my waist over this morning in bed. And I was like, no, baby, we don't got time for that this morning. I got to get to the prayer breakfast and I got to be on time, and a little TMI. But he can wait. I'll see him later tonight. But I was here early today.
And here's Nancy Mace saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, wearing a Scarlet A shirt for voting against Kevin McCarthy.
I'm wearing the scarlet letter after the week that I just had last week, being a woman up here and being demonized for my vote and for my voice. I'm here to let the rest of the world know and the country know I'm on the side of the people. I'm not on the side of the establishment, and I'm going to do the right thing every single time, no matter the consequences, because I don't answer to anybody in D.C. I don't answer to anyone in Washington. I only answer to the people.
There's a lot of turbulence around Nancy Mace, as these headlines make clear. Her entire staff, all of them, have resigned, quit, been fired, but 100% staff turnover is usually a sign that something is amiss. And certainly, when it comes to Nancy Mace and her antics, there is. In a few moments, we're going to watch a series of clips from this week with George Stephanopoulos. During these clips, you're going to see firsthand what fuels political extremism. Specifically, you're going to see cynicism, raw, burning, incandescent cynicism. Cynicism on the part of Nancy Mace and cynicism on the part of ABC News. Now, George Stephanopoulos is one of the good guys in broadcast journalism. He is smart, he is honest, and he is insightful. He is capable of doing great interviews about the most serious subjects. He can make complex issues accessible. It is and has always been his gift. George Stephanopoulos is not a cynical person, but having Nancy Mace on your Public Affairs Sunday show, which is a venerable institution and that is supposed to be committed to the public interest, by definition, is a cynical act. Why is it that the craziest people in Congress are the most famous? Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Paul Gosar and George Santos and now Nancy Mace. Why are the most disordered personalities household names? All of these people conduct themselves not like members of Congress, not like citizens entrusted with enormous responsibilities, but like contestants on a reality show assigned to live in a treehouse with 30 other people for 6 months at a time. Many of them have come to love the fame. They love the attention. They love the adulation, the cameras, the clicks, the likes, the whatever. But the whatever matters because the whatever goes to the heart of why they're there in the first place. And if the whatever has nothing to do with the country, then their purpose there doesn't matter. It was a mistake for the corporate media bosses to permit the degradation of their shows with guests like Nancy Mace for the sake of monetizing ratings to the tune of billions of dollars. What used to be a show that was top shelf has become lowest common denominator with choices of guests like Nancy Mace. And so there's an old saying in the West about snakes. The best way to avoid getting bit by one is don't touch it, don't provoke it, and by all means, don't pick it up. But ABC News decided to pick up Nancy Mace. Let's watch the drama unfold.
How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald Trump.
No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting.
Let's watch the video from 2019 of Nancy Mace disclosing for the very first time the trauma of her rape and the years of trauma that came with it from being a rape victim.
It is not your fault. I'm going to say it again. It was not your fault. And it took me 25 years to be able to get up here and talk about this publicly. And that's why I am so passionate about this issue. I am pro-life, but with exceptions, because I cannot explain the trauma that a woman goes through when once she has this happen to her. And so today I ask that you all support this amendment. It passed in a bipartisan fashion in Judiciary Committee. It simply puts in the exception for rape and incest.
This clip matters for a single reason. And it's the reason that Nancy Mace is on television across the nation on Sunday morning. She is a member of Congress who is one of the most outspoken defenders of the extremist movement and cause. But what makes her unique is that she didn't used to be. But one day, voila, kaboom, she has a spontaneous epiphany, and forevermore, Nancy Mace is MAGA. And now, without hesitation, Nancy Mace, the woman who disclosed the trauma of her rape in 2019, is among the very strongest denialists and defenders of Donald Trump, an accused sexual abuser and somebody who was found guilty by a jury of sexual abuse. Let's watch Nancy Mace dishonestly, ludicrously, and absurdly try to turn the tables on George Stephanopoulos. And that the question about her support shames her and shames all victims. And it is that shaming that perpetuates a cycle of violence against women, not the actions of the rapist, not the assault on the integrity and the character and the smearing and the defamation of a woman like E. Jean Carroll. Let's watch this insanity because it is as twisted and sick and manipulative and clinically off the wall as anything that you can possibly witness.
And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they are
It makes it
defamed
harder
by
when other
presidential
women
candidates?
joke about it, and she's joked about it. And I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame
you
you
are.
at all. In fact,
I have
called you
dealt with this
candid.
for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming
I'm
forward.
just asking-
No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just
And I
asking you-
find it offensive, and this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape. Donald Trump
They are
has been-
judged and they're shamed, and you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm
I think
not-
it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all. I called you
told my story. It
courageous.
took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
And I answered it. You're shaming me for my political choices.
I'm asking you a question about why you endorse someone who's been found liable for rape. Just
It was
answer the
not a
question.
criminal court. This was
It was a civil
It
court
was a
that found
civil
him
court.
liable
And
for
by the
rape.
way, she joked about the judgment and what she was going to do with all that money, and I find that offensive.
I'm asking you
but
about the
as
man
a
who's-
rape victim who's been shamed for years now because of her rape, you're trying to shame me again by asking me this
You've
political
repeated
question.
that. You've repeated that again.
I think
again,
it's
and again.
offensive. As a woman, I find it offensive.
I'm
For my
asking you-
political choices, I've endorsed the man that I believe is best for our country. It's not Joe Biden.
Nancy Mace's cravenness is extraordinary to behold. Donald Trump is somebody who demeaned her, insulted her, degraded her, and dehumanized her. But just like Marco Rubio, just like Ted Cruz, but just like every other person he steamrolled, bulldozed, and demeaned, who works in politics, that is, she got in line. She got on her knees and she bowed her head. Nancy Mace is a loyal soldier to the cause of a man who defamed her. One thing to remember about all autocratic movements is the strangeness that they bring forward. Power corrupts and bends people. Fame warps them, shatters them. It brings out all of their worst qualities and characters while suppressing their decent ones. Nancy Mace has changed an awful lot, and not for the better, according to any virtue which most every religion from the beginning of time has held in high regard. What Nancy Mace has become is pathetic. She's a character like somebody who would have fit in perfectly with Gary Busey and Gary Coleman, living in a tent on some island somewhere. But this isn't a reality show. It's real life. And that's what makes Nancy Mace a threat, not comic relief. She stands out. She stands out for being unprincipled in a state that has given us Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham, and Nikki Haley in recent years. It's an extraordinary accomplishment. Remember this about Nancy Mace. More than anything else, what she craves is attention. And maybe the best way to say something about restoring trust in media, in politics, in the country, isn't through a TV ad that proclaims yourself the most trusted name in news. Instead, maybe give the American people insight. Help them understand the complexities of the world. Maybe instead of Nancy Mace, the Swedish Prime Minister would have been a great guest. After all, Sweden joined NATO this week. But who would want that to interrupt the Nancy Mace show, which must roll on, apparently, forever? I know this. George Stephanopoulos deserved better. The American people and ABC News viewers deserve better. When the lowest amongst us rise to the highest offices in the land, there will be catastrophe. The system is set up to guarantee it. Thank you for listening to my political commentary. If you like what you heard today, please also consider subscribing to The Warning daily newsletter on Substack.